listening audience might miss a word or two. So we'll start the Middlebury Select Board meeting of Tuesday, June 10th with the call to order and approval of the agenda.
I believe we have one change. Item 6, I believe, is not ripe.
Would somebody care to recommend approval of the agenda?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Changes
Sure.
to the agenda.
Sorry, I believe item 6 is not ripe and was pulled.
Item 6 is coming off. Anything else? No other changes? All in favor of the agenda, last item number 6, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Next is approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Comments on the consent agenda? Fred?
On item 7,
7?
Where is it? The Ilsley Library. Was that in the, sorry, that isn't the
The
agenda.
renovation expansion project?
Town
or-
Manager's Report. Okay, it's under Town Manager's Report, the Ilsley Library Clerk of the Works Report.
Yep.
There's 2 references in there. One relating to easements needed between the town and Ilsley. And I just need to understand, my understanding is the town owns the property. Ilsley trustees manage the activities of the library and the budget. But why we need to give an easement to ourselves, I don't understand. And the other relates to that, the reference in that report of REARC Properties having some ownership of elements of the library that we're paying for, and that the costs of those assets are related to the parent owner of REARC, John Illick Sr. I want to ask about those. Understand, I'm of the crazy belief that if we're paying for something, we ought to own it. Free and clear, and not have to pay licensing fees or other ongoing fees to REARC. So if that requires a separate agenda discussion, you can, or maybe it can be answered in another way efficiently, whatever you, because those are my 2 issues with the consent agenda.
Anybody who has the answer to that?
Yeah, a little bit on the first one, and we can send out a summary if you'd like after this. But this is it's in front of town council right now. It goes back over a year. I think Dana re-raised it because it will need to be resolved before a certificate of occupancy is issued. So it has some legacy issue associated with the parcel line. But I'll talk to Dana and figure out the reasoning behind it. But it is something she and Judy have presented for town council to review. The other one, would need to know a little more detail about what you're referencing.
Under paragraph 9 of the Clerk of the Works report. Well, I'll just visit with you later about it some other time.
And we'll send out a summary to the group.
Yeah, if you can look into those 2 issues and
Thank you.
anything else? Then all in favor of approving the consent agenda as drafted?
Aye.
Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Citizen comments. Is there anyone here for something that's not on the agenda? Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Ravel Allen, and I was in communication with Mark last week. I'm representing the 500-plus members of Indivisible Middlebury to introduce a resolution, another resolution, condemning attacks on due process and affirming the constitutional rights of all people in the town of Middlebury. I understand that you all are not in the habit of adopting resolutions. However, in view of recent arrests, imprisonments, and deportations of Vermont farm and construction workers with no regard for their right to due process or right to free speech in some cases, and in view of the ongoing events that are occurring now in Los Angeles, it is very apparent that these are not ordinary times. It is time for citizens and all levels of public servants to take action against these undemocratic events. I'm here to request that Middlebury join with other Vermont towns, among them Brandon and Rutland, to move to put this resolution on the agenda for the June 24th Select Board meeting for discussion and a vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions?
So I think we'll take that offline. And some of that's going to probably relate to how the board feels about the next agenda item. So we're going to, is there anybody else for something that's not on the agenda?
You have 2
We do have a hand here from Hannah and then Judy, so I'm assuming it's for something. So Hannah, I'm going to allow you to talk here. You should. There you go.
Diana,
Awesome. Hi, guys. Long time no see.
we don't see you now.
Hi, awesome. So, as you know, the Middlebury Dog Mayor campaign is in full swing. We're in the second week of voting. The voting will conclude on Friday night at midnight. Our first week of voting was done blind, so people could pay their $5 per vote, but nobody was seeing the tally. And then we decided to kind of up the ante and maybe put a little boost in participation and funds raised. This week, I'm every morning posting the tally on our Homeward Bound Facebook page. So if you jump on that page, you'll see that over 500 people have voted. It's a close race. There's 2 kind of leaders, and the other 2 are clawing their way up, I think, and anything could happen between now and Friday night. But what I wanted to remind you folks on the select board of is that we have a swearing-in ceremony for the top vote getter on Monday at 11 at the town office. And I'd love for you to be there if your professions and employers allow you to do so. I spoke with Karen Mott today, and she is preparing the swearing-in verbiage that will reflect very much the content that she uses for other town offices. So I think we'll have some fun. There's definitely going to be some media coverage. The media has spread far and wide following an NBC interview here in Vermont last week. The story made it all the way out to the coast of California and down the coast of North Carolina, both on television stations and radio stations. So we're having a lot of fun with it, stirring up some attention for both you and for us. And yeah, just happening, concluding Friday at midnight, and with the swearing in on Monday, this coming Monday, June 16th at 11.
And the ceremony is here, Hannah?
Yes.
Perfect.
Is that an open to the public in general event or just public officials?
Open to the public. Definitely not by special invitation or anything. The hope is that as many folks that are working right in that building as possible can take a quick break at 11 and join us. You folks, and then certainly all the fans of the winner, and then hopefully the runners-up as well. Definitely, more the merrier.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Hannah.
Thanks, Hannah.
Yeah, thank you.
Alrighty. And we have Judy as well. So Judy, I'm going to allow you to talk. Just give me a second. Oh, excuse me. Alice, apologies. Judy, if you can unmute yourself.
Yep. Thanks so much. I think I've got to get my 2 dogs' names in the running, because I'm certain they would be co-winners of the mayor, and I think they do very well. I just have a clarifying question. To what Ravel just presented about a resolution that she asked for further discussion at the June 24th Select Board meeting, will that be added to the agenda?
I can't make that commitment right now, Judy.
And are you able to tell me why?
Because we don't know what we have and whether we need to determine as a board if we're going to start becoming politicized.
Okay, so let me get this straight. Right now, you're not willing to commit to adding this resolution to your next select board meeting because you're not sure what other issues are going to present themselves?
I think from my standpoint, this is similar to the Medicaid item, which is coming up next, and how the board feels about that will probably indicate our appetite for future resolutions on state and national matters.
Andy, please say that again.
I think that the discussion that we're having immediately after public comment will indicate the appetite of this board for discussing resolutions regarding state and national matters.
Okay, well, thank you. That'll be interesting to hear, especially given how resolutions have been accepted throughout the state, throughout the country. But thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you, Judy.
Okay, anybody else on something that's not on the agenda? So, Doc, you wanna kick us off here?
Thank you. Glad to see that Middlebury is going to the dogs in a good way. So, woof woof. Thanks for hearing me again. I just want to try to urge the select board to consider this resolution, which really reflects the concerns of our citizens. When the president of Porter Hospital warns us about the dire consequences of these cuts on our healthcare institutions, our neighbors, and ourselves, we are really at a Paul Revere moment. It is the select board's responsibility to sound the alarm. It's up to our state legislature to be George Washington, but right now we need Paul Revere. We've shared the Vermont Department of Health and the Kaiser Family Foundation data on the consequences of these cuts, but numbers alone cannot express the toll. Every family will be touched by these cuts. Blue Cross Blue Shield may go bankrupt. 4 of Vermont's 14 hospitals are in danger of closing or severely cutting back services. Many Vermonters will lose health insurance. Children, women, pregnancies, the elderly, the disabled, the poor. We are tasked with balancing justice with compassion. That task starts at this level of citizen involvement and local consideration. Just today, VT Digger had an article about the Dartmouth-Hitchcock Medical Center network, and they're announcing a hiring freeze due to the potential cuts to Medicaid and research funding, and this includes Southwest Medical Center in Bennington. Representative Becca Ballant last week on Vermont Edition said this: "I can't tell you how many healthcare facilities that have been in touch with my office saying this bill would be absolutely devastating for rural healthcare in Vermont." And Peter Welch in yesterday's Vermont Edition, in an interview, said, "We've got thousands of people who get their health care through Medicaid, and that includes disabled kids, and the parents taking care of these kids for whom Medicaid is a lifeline. They can lose that health care. 2 out of 3 seniors who are in nursing homes that are paid for by Medicaid, and they can be kicked out of these homes with these cuts. Vermont has strongly supported nutrition programs, farm to school, Meals on Wheels, school lunch programs, the SNAP program. It's about $6 a day for families that are eligible. It really makes a difference. There's going to be billions of dollars cut from these programs. Why in the world are we going to do that when the benefit, quote unquote, is going to be higher debt and significant tax cuts for very, very wealthy people who don't need them and aren't asking for them, and for corporations that are already paying record low taxes?" So I hope you'll take the Paul Revere comment to heart and do the necessary thing in this really emergent crisis that we're facing. And thank you again for your attention.
Doc, before you get up, let me see if any of the board members have questions for you.
Sure.
Sure. The resolution doesn't say anything about SNAP, which is also obviously cut in the budget bill. One of my concerns certainly is the slippery slope one, right? Medicaid, $800 billion, huge, incredible impact. SNAP, huge, incredible impact. Job Corps, huge, incredible impact. The town's voice, the seven of us signing something, is small, and I don't feel like Paul Revere. I feel like Paul Revere was a silversmith, not a representative of his town in Massachusetts.
But he saw what was coming, and I think that the value of Middlebury's Select Board endorsing this resolution is that it sets an example for other select boards to do the same. And indeed, I think 4 or 5 other towns have already, either through their select board or through town meeting day resolutions, have expressed their concerns in a similar vein to this resolution. So I realize we are asking you to step up as one of the first significantly sized towns in Vermont to make this statement. I'm sure that once we start that process going, that we'll find significant positive consideration among other towns who share the same concerns about the consequences and what this will be. So, I think we're alerting the legislature, and we're alerting our congressional delegation to the concerns that we have as a town.
Sure.
And I'm sure will be shared by other towns, because you can't look at these cuts and not see the devastation that this will cause to our local healthcare, our economies, our
Yeah, right. No, even without these cuts, Blue Cross Blue Shield is essentially insolvent. Yeah, we are, our health system can barely be called a system at this point.
Yeah.
I understand the gravity of the situation. I just have questions about our place and our voice in this. I worry that we'll be asked to opine on Gaza and other international efforts. And I think that the business of the town and the business of this board is on things where Middlebury is specifically, rather than generally as citizens of the United States, impacted.
And I think clearly, and I'm reflecting on Bob Ortmeyer's statement, but president of Porter Hospital, this is a local impact. This is a severe strain on and a severe threat to the continued successful healthcare that Porter Hospital can provide, and that is as local a concern as we might imagine. I understand your concern about the slippery slope. I think this is not a place for debating international issues, and but we're talking about something that's going to come down on our heads very soon, and in Middlebury to our neighbors and the citizens of Addison County and Vermont. I think to remain silent is to be complicit in this when we know that these consequences are coming down the pike. Yeah. That we cannot remain silent, and as a town, I think it behooves us to take that step up in responsible resolution that is founded, and we've given you the data to back this up. This is not speculative in any way.
So. Sure. Thanks.
There's a question over there.
I saw.
Yeah.
We're talking here.
Oh, okay.
I can wait. Please come up to the table so we.
My name is John Cook. I'm a resident of Middlebury. In 1995, I helped the USDA and the National Center for Health Statistics develop the current measures of food insecurity and hunger that are used in the United States. And subsequently, I spent 25 years at Boston Medical Center in the pediatrics department doing research on the effects of food insecurity and hunger on child health. I can guarantee you that the children in Addison County will be very seriously adversely affected by this bill if it is approved. It will affect their growth, it will affect their development, it will affect their school performance, it will affect their health and their health care costs, and we will be paying for it one way or another for decades to come.
This is in relation to
This is in
SNAP.
relation to SNAP,
Yeah.
Medicaid, and other aspects of the bill, but specifically those two, they interact very strongly.
Sure. Yeah, they are important pieces of our safety net.
And they affect every child that you see on the street, whether you think that child is in poverty or not, because it will affect their schools and it will affect their ability to get an education in school, as well as the children who are in poverty.
So just out of curiosity, we've got two subject matter experts right here. I mean, the evidence is insurmountable that nutrition and primary care are your major factors affecting the health of society. Why are the legislators on the backing Trump on changing that?
That is a very good question, and I would be delighted if I had an answer, but I don't. There is no logical reason. The only reasons I can think of have to do with fear of retribution, fear of their careers being damaged, fear of their physical well-being. There is no substantive reason for them to support that bill.
I see you, just give him a second, he's speaking.
Sorry?
Somebody was behind you raising your hands. When you raise your hand, I catch it, so, come to you.
I think also that if we look at the Vermont state legislature, that we would find a significant majority of legislators who are concerned about the impact of this bill, and if they were in DC voting, they would clearly vote against it. I think there's no question that it is widely seen by our legislature as a threat to our healthcare and well-being.
And is there a resolution at the legislative level?
I think there are
If anybody
bills
should
that
do a resolution, wouldn't you think that our state house would do that?
Well, and I'm hoping that they will, and I'm hoping that having the resolution coming from a number of select boards will be a further impetus for them to emulate this and to use this kind of a resolution to further the progress on the state level for dealing with our healthcare crisis. So I mean, I think we set an example for the legislature to follow.
Understand?
I'm still coming back to you, Dan. Did you have a question or comment?
No, I just wanted to say a few things, and it's really hard to do over Zoom, but I have the same concerns that Andy has expressed. I don't think there's anything anybody sitting in there can tell us more or make us feel worse or make us understand more of the crisis. We understand this crisis. We feel the same pains that you do and everything. I just question whether a resolution that's only going to probably be posted on our website has anything to do with trying to fix the problem. And I think that the state legislature and our congressional representatives are the ones that have the power to change, to hopefully change this. There's probably, of the things that are occurring, this is one of them, but we could probably think of 50 things that are going to, or 100 things that Trump's administration has changed since he's taken power that is going to affect us in this economy. And you know, what about what just happened with the vaccine approval board? We could probably go down to dozens and dozens of this. We've never politicized this select board. In my recollection, at least in my time, we've never done a resolution like this, and for political reasons, and it's probably been that way for a long time. And it's just gonna. We've been elected to do things for this community, and you know, with the budgetary to support Mark and the staff, and providing all the services in the town to attract new businesses, to build new housing, to address homelessness, and those are things that we can have an impact on this. I feel everybody's pain. I just don't see any impact that this resolution is gonna have to help fix this. And I'll throw it back on everybody here. Has everybody here, we're getting lots of letters and we're reading every one of them. Has everybody there talked to our state legislators, our state senators, our federal representatives? Where's the American Medical Association and all the dozens and dozens of other medical associations? Why don't I read anything that they're fighting back? Nobody's saying anything, and we have such a small voice, and we have our own problems. And I have a great concern of all of a sudden us spending lots and lots of times over dozens and dozens of resolutions. There's got to be something more that we could probably do, and maybe one of the things that we could do, and this is not my idea, but maybe we as a select board write a letter from the town to the various people that can do something. I think that'd be more effective than a resolution, and I just have concerns with doing a resolution.
I have somebody who
And I
was-
would personally like to hear from my other select board. I would like to see us as a select board debate this a little bit.
So, back in the corner here, yes, ma'am. Mr.
Please come
Cook,
up.
Could you yield the chair to?
Hi, I'm Ellen Oxfeld, resident of Middlebury, and
Yeah.
I just wanted to make a few comments to clarify things because I think there's a little bit of confusion. This resolution, if we look at the title, is a resolution regarding proposed federal Medicaid funding cuts and Vermont's healthcare crisis. If for some reason everybody in Washington, D.C. had a, brain transplant or something, and tomorrow they said, oh, forget it, we're not going to do any of those cuts or anything. We, as you alluded to, Andy, have a crisis here in Vermont, as you all know. Blue Cross Blue Shield could go under. We have 4 hospitals that could go under. When Vermont towns speak as a town, it's somewhat different than an individual writing to their legislator, which obviously we all should do, but you have an overview. How does our process, which would be made worse with Medicaid cuts, impact our local services, our local populations? We've seen that with the education crisis, which is very connected, and I don't want to weigh in on the particular politics, but the legislature was very attentive, for instance, to the Vermont League of Towns and Cities and what they thought. And we've also seen that there is a dire need to address our healthcare crisis in Vermont, regardless of what happens in DC. I happen to think that you all weighing in on this is not the same as weighing in on, an international issue, because this affects our town, and our legislators need to hear from all the towns. I think there is somewhat of a tendency in the legislature on health care, and I don't want to say something, but insulting or anything, but it's such a big issue that there's a tendency to want to kick the can down the road. But we can't. We can't. And whatever happens in DC, we have a very big crisis here in Vermont. I don't know why it's more in Vermont than other states, but I actually think it will come in other states. And we need, in the short term and also in the long term, to get back to real healthcare reform. And I think you're not speaking up on a particular bill. You're not saying here is, it would be political if you said you should pass S 126 or H 140, right? That would be, Dan, to get to your issue. If you were to weigh in on a particular bill, you might feel that that's not something you as select board should do. But I do think it's very important for our state legislators to hear from you all and hopefully from many other select boards, so that whether they have if they need an emergency session in the summer, or even if it's in January when they reconvene, healthcare will be first, front and center, because it is so essential. And I know many people have remarked, pretty obvious that even the educational crisis cannot really be adequately addressed. So that's how I just like to sort of reorient this discussion, because it's very much a local issue and a state issue as well.
Just as an addendum to what Ellen said, our silence is a statement. If we say nothing, if we do not act and address this issue as a town, then it's not a neutral thing to do. It is a statement of that we don't feel that this rises to the importance and the necessity of the town coming to grips with this.
That's true if you see this as the work of this board, right? If the school board doesn't opine about matters of the town, that's not silence as a statement. That's them taking care of their purview.
Why is this not the purview of the town when the harm that we're facing will come down on the town, on the select board? You are all going to be the firemen once
Sure.
the fire starts.
If there was a war starting and we would be drafting Middlebury residents to go to it, it would have an immediate, important impact on the citizens of this town. And it is also a matter of politics far above the level of this town, how that is debated and addressed. The residents, with their own voices, should certainly take part in it. But I would not think that the town should have a role in discussing matters of international diplomacy.
I think the residents, though, are using their voices, and one thing they're doing is coming to us, because we are a board to represent the town. And I really appreciate all of you being here, and I recognize that I'm new, I've only been here since March, but this is a groundswell compared to anything I've seen since January. To me, it's moving to see you all here, and I don't really buy the "our voice is too small" argument, because I think a small voice was never. If all of us thought that our voice was too small, no one would ever say anything. So I don't really buy that, and I also, again, I'm new, but I don't really understand the slippery slope fear. I think there are a lot of issues, like you said, there are a lot of things people could bring up, but when people bring something up and it really resonates, it feels different, right? Like this feels different than other, I don't know, this feels different to me. And it's clearly a concern. We've all acknowledged we are concerned, and this resolution is just asking us to make our concern official, and I think that matters.
Can I make a comment? So, 100% support the resolution on my side. Dan brought up a good point last meeting when he said, why only a pediatrician is bringing it up, why nobody else is talking. Now look at this now, more people are talking about it, right? And Brian, you said that the legislature, nobody's talking about it, how come? This is the start of the conversation where they might take notice that enough towns are talking about this and they have to take a stand on something. I don't think it's political at all. I think
whether you are a liberal or a conservative, all the kids are going to be impacted, and we should not be thinking about this as a political tool at all. I 100% support this.
I agree with Megan and Farhad. And listening to the conversation, some comments in response to something Ellen just mentioned, the town doesn't comment on legislation. Well, recently our wastewater superintendent did comment and proposed legislation relating to land application of sludge, and how there was perhaps an overreaction to that compared to Middlebury's EQ, excellent quality sludge, which we rely on to be land applied. So I don't buy that we should never comment on state legislation. It's just odd to me that just a few moments ago, Hannah could command town attention and resources and time for the benefit of stirring up attention. Her words. For an issue, and it's a fun issue. This is a more serious issue, but why shouldn't we stir up attention for what little amount? Just it seems like a real disconnect for us not to do that. I think I agree with the feeling of futility about a lot of this, but I don't see anything in this that's political. It doesn't mention Trump. It doesn't mention Republican. Okay, Dan said it was politicized, but I agree with Farhad. I don't see that as that. This is broadly supported by people in the community. There's a lot of documentation to support it. It affects agencies that are important to the town, the hospital, and other agencies that we fund. And I see that as something that is not harmful to take 10 minutes on our agenda or whatever is allocated, and support this. And if members are philosophically opposed because they think it's futility, I suppose you don't have to sign it.
This isn't a one sign or all sign, this is a select board thread. I got Ross next here. He's got his hand up 3 or 4 times, so
Ross Conrad, Middlebury. So I just want to kind of address this question of resolutions in general, because I get that there could be some resistance to wanting to get involved in things that is not directly in your jurisdiction, that you don't feel like you have a lot of control over. Quite frankly, that's how the people of Middlebury often feel. And you are their voice. You're elected to represent them. And so one of the ways, yes, they can contact their legislator there in Washington or in the State House, but also one of the stops of making their voice heard is here. And I know there's some concern about things being political. I don't quite understand that because this is the most political group in town. You guys are all run for office. You're elected. You're politicians. I know it doesn't seem like it sometimes. We're a small town, but that's the reality. And so, to me, this comes down to democracy. If you believe in democracy and giving the residents of the town a voice, you're one of the vehicles to make that happen if you choose, right? And this idea that you might be deciding or making decisions on things that you can't really feel like you can change. Well, a wise woman told me just recently, you don't have to win every battle, okay? It's sometimes just showing the position of the town, whether you put it on the ballot and let the voters decide, or you do it yourselves. It is an influence. Other towns may see it and be influenced. Our legislators in the State House may see it and start to realize, especially if they're representing us, where we stand. Our federal, representatives, it gives a message. And so I'm asking you, if you are a firm believer in democracy, to give the people of the town a voice when they come to you with resolutions, and seriously consider them, and don't just say some slippery slope, we're not going to do it, it's political, whatever. I think this is your role in a sense. It may not be the role you're used to doing, may not be a role you really relish, but it's kind of what you signed up for when you became our representatives. So thank you.
I think I had somebody over here next and then back over. But if nobody, come on up.
I'm not a resident of the town of Middlebury. I'm Wendy Baker. I'm the superintendent of schools. And I can very much appreciate your desire to stay neutral as a board. I support a similar board, you know, who grapples with those same things. And I'm not here to convince you to settle on a resolution in particular or a letter. I think my reason for coming tonight, since you're taking testimony on the issue, is to let you know a little bit about what we see in the school system related to this. And I see that as relevant to you in your role as stewards of the community in that respect. 40% of Middlebury students receive Medicaid funds in some way, shape, or form. And those Medicaid funds allow tentacles of support that branch out beyond the school into local providers that I'm sure you've already heard from and can name in many respects, and impacts students' ability to have vision care, which obviously impacts learning significantly. In Vermont, we have universal meals, so that's not something that is, you know, their food insecurity during school hours. That's not what I'm here to talk about. Any kind of mental health supports, drug and alcohol prevention efforts, you know, all of that is funded through Medicaid funds. The school district receives about $300,000 a year relative to Medicaid funds that support intervention and prevention efforts. In my view, and I don't say this lightly, you know, on maybe Friday or maybe Monday, the legislature might vote to ensure that our districts are all changed dramatically so that Addison Central, who currently serves Middlebury and 6 surrounding towns, may no longer exist, and we may become part of a larger district, right? You've followed the news in that respect. If Medicaid funding is significantly changed, I would dare say it would have a much greater impact on the fabric of this community than that kind of a change in a school district, which I don't say lightly. And so I think what's important for me to know and to do in my position is just to appear before you, allow you the opportunity to ask any questions that you might have of me relative to that, and ensure that you understand that just like there are many people who are not speaking up about changes in school districts, right? Or the possibility that townspeople may never again vote on a school budget. That actually is also part of what could happen out of this legislative session, depending upon how the negotiations go. And I think, I don't know about you, but sometimes the public's understanding and response to something lags quite a bit behind the moment when it's important to speak up. And I think I would certainly hate for the town of Middlebury not to understand the potential impact on its citizens that this kind of change could bring about. So that's my purpose for being here, is just to be able to offer my perspective to you and to be available to you should you have questions about that, given there's so much testimony coming before you.
So, Wendy, I've seen a lot of statements in the paper about the impact of the education reform on the district. I have seen nothing from school leaders on the Medicaid.
Yeah, so the Vermont Superintendents Association actually has taken a position on that and is working, with legislators around this issue at the state level to ensure that state level advocacy is able to ensure that we are taking the well-being of children across the state in hand, and also advocating to the extent possible in our national representatives. So that's where that collective voice seems to be able to be most surgically placed, if you will. Perhaps Vermont League of Cities and Towns is similar, relative to towns, such as Middlebury. Like I said, what you choose to do is up to you. I'm not coming to here before you as a resident of Middlebury. I just want to make sure that you're understanding that from the point of view of someone who takes care of many of the residents of Middlebury, if this change comes into play, and I don't think many of us really thought about the impact of these dollars, and there is no way to backfill them. I mean, the magnitude is such that there's just simply no way to backfill them. There's no way for us to pick up these costs, even if we could afford all the spending in the education side that it might take it. There's not enough money to do that. And it's just important for me that I'm being available to you and sharing that information with you for your consideration.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. I've lived here for about 54 years.
State your name first, please.
My name is David Rosenberg. For most of those 54 years, I've walked on Seminary Street or Washington Street or Court Street or South Street to the college where I taught until 15 years ago. And along the way, I've noted how much a special role Middlebury has as the Shire town in Addison County in providing social welfare services. People move here for that reason. And half of those houses, maybe a third of those houses on those paths I've walked, are filled with folks who are at the most vulnerable level of the healthcare system. The legislature has done something last week, I think it was, or the week before. They tried to put a cap on what hospitals can charge for specialty drugs. And now they're trying to figure out what goes into that and what doesn't, and how do you measure it, and what. That's a fairly high value kind of injection for life-saving medications. We're talking about something else with this bill, Medicaid. It's concerning low-income folks just trying to get by. So if there's anything we want to ask you to do, it's to put more effort into trying to raise that on the agenda item. And I'm surprised to hear that none of you have heard anything from healthcare providers about Medicaid. Is that correct?
We have letters from president of the hospital and other agencies.
Okay. Well, our job is to get some more letters to these folks. And we will do that. Lastly, concerning your feeling of helplessness, what can we do? Just because there's only a little that we can do doesn't mean we shouldn't do what we can do, if it's the right thing to do. Period.
Amen.
Thank you.
I guess I'd like to go around and just have the board, I mean, you've given your feelings. Anything more to say, Fred?
I don't have any more to say.
Isabel?
Izzy hasn't spoken.
I'm in favor. I think before I was worried that resolutions and taking up resolutions would lead to us commenting on international matters, which I'm not interested in doing in this capacity, in this board. But I think being able to turn it into a local issue has really changed my perspective, so I'm for this resolution.
I just want to be on the right side of the issue on this one. So I'm going to support 100%.
Megan?
Yeah, I'm also in support. I think I think it is a local issue, and there's a strong support from the community, and I think we should do what we can. And I think it matters that we take a stand on this issue. So yeah.
Dan?
I just want to make sure everybody in the audience knows clearly that I understand the issue entirely, and my reluctance has been what I see our job is to do in the community, and what we can do, and what impact, and what we've always done. So although my tough side says that I should vote against this, and no matter, it's obviously gonna pass, and we as a select board, one of our rules are that if we pass something, it's all ours to carry, and that we would all sign it. So, I think I'm gonna have to vote for it. It's just a real emotional issue, and in my heart, I know it's right, and in my other side of being a select board member, I know it. We should be doing, and so I'm going to vote for it, and we'll just see what comes down the pike for us.
Andy?
Yeah. I pay a fair amount of attention to Burlington. Burlington has a partisan city council. They spend a lot of time talking about things which are not local and germane to what happens within the boundaries of their city. I worry about that for us. We are a nonpartisan board. I do not know the party affiliation or voting habits of anyone here except someone who happened to be on a state committee for a time. I am going to abstain in this vote. I recognize that this is a very important issue, and I recognize it's one of, as Dan mentioned, 100 very important issues. I feel it. I am good friends with someone who's on the Green Mountain Care Board. I was on the city council in Montpelier with someone who is now the chair of the UVM Medical Center Board. Like, I'm there. I know that this system is fragile and it already does not provide the services people need, and that these cuts are draconian. I also realize that I live in a country which, for whatever reason, has chosen a politics that has put increasing transfers of wealth to the top at the top of their priorities. And that's not how we ensure the safety of our transit systems and do the things that this select board has been charged with the state legislature to do.
I think I owe it to the board to give my opinion. I've been very hesitant to take up these types of issues. I understand Ross's point. We are elected officials, but we're elected to run the business of the town. We spend all our time, and you can see all the projects and everything that we work to ensure that the town is taken care of, that the town is planned for, that there's a vision. I totally support going after this. You know, the lady who spoke first, I lobby on process, and you know, I'm a business person, and my customer base relies upon immigrant laborers. And the fact that, you know, as one of our good customers, the first 8 people who were taken, who were swept out of the farm by ICE, but to take every issue and actually fully dive into it at a select board meeting that we get 2 hours every 2 weeks is going to sideline us from doing the real business of the town. And it's not our job. I would disagree with you in many ways, Ross. We elect at the same time that we're electing us. We elect state representatives, state senators, we elect federal representative and 2 federal senators. And I spend time lobbying those people as well as the governor on issues that are greater than what I feel we are charged with at the town leadership level. That said, this is clearly stands above many of the other issues in its immediate and direct influence upon a huge portion of our residents. When I first was elected to the Select Board, I remember the statistics of the number of families that qualified for free lunch. And I was blown away. I grew up in this community. I could not believe that we had that many people who qualified, that percentage. And so clearly it's a need. My preference has always been, though, that we write a letter as opposed to a resolution. A resolution to me implies that we are the authority and that we have actually done all of the work ourselves. We haven't held hearings. We haven't done any of the fact finding. I can't tell you that I've spent the time to fact check everything in this resolution. Whereas if we were writing a letter and sending it to our senators, our representative, our state reps and state senators and the governor, if I was off a little bit, I wouldn't feel so bad. Because the point is that we are very concerned as a community, and we want to make it known that we feel that they need to spend some time addressing that. There's some great statements in here that I totally agree with, the need to work across the aisle, the impact it's going to have on the community. I would include SNAP. I think that they don't stand alone. I think it goes hand in hand. I think you can't have, the problem's going to be just as bad if just one of them goes. You've got to have nutrition and medical care. But to call on like the Vermont Assembly to replace it, how are they going to do that? This is a federal issue, which to me is many levels above us, and why I favor a letter. That said, if the board wants to do the resolution, I hope somebody has fact-checked it all, because it will stand out there. It's not just going to those who have influence. It's going to be widely perused in the public realm, and we'll look silly if we sign something that's not factual.
Yeah, I just want to make a suggestion to the Select Board that I think you could be well served if you came up with a policy to address resolutions in the future, what type of resolutions you're willing to consider, maybe which ones you're not, that type of thing, just to help with the process so we don't have to go through this every time.
Some 10 or 12 years ago, we came up with a funnel. And we stopped using that because at the time, we were having a lot of people coming in. They wanted us to solve issues, this issue, that issue. We said we need to focus on our own community. We need to focus on the big issues and what makes a difference. Frankly, we haven't needed to for a lot of years. Things have been quite smooth, and so if we start seeing a lot of stuff coming, I agree with you. We are in a time. The first time that President Trump was in office, there was an element that pushed back against him. It doesn't appear. It seems to be like we have free. My business is tremendously impacted by the tariffs, and nobody pushed back on the tariffs. Look at what it's done to our economy. So there's a lot of things that I would love to address, but this is not the place to do it, in my mind. So,
Dan's hand is up.
Dan, your hand?
Mute.
Unmute yourself, Dan.
Yeah, I was
I'll get
just
you
going
in
to
a
say,
second.
maybe we, what the motion be is that we will pass a resolution on this, and maybe we could have the current resolution looked at for fact checking, and we do sign something, but maybe we'll make some minor tweaks to this resolution.
I would like to add SNAP to it.
Can we also add SNAP on it?
I think you need to.
I concur with that.
Mr. Cook?
John Cook again. I just want to thank every member of the Select Board for your serious and heartfelt consideration of this document and this issue. It means a lot to me as a resident of Middlebury, and the children that I see on the street, it will mean a lot to them. Thank you.
Yes, please. Okay, you're ready.
I'll move to support the draft select board resolution regarding the proposed Medicaid funding cuts pending fact checking. And I also want to move to have a draft select board resolution regarding the SNAP cuts.
Can we merge the two? That it would,
Both of them.
because they're happening in the same budget bill.
Okay, so we'll merge it together.
Second.
Moved in second.
The motions are merged.
Any other questions or comments from the board? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstained?
Abstain.
Okay. All right, well, anybody who would like to work on that, help us with the draft update? Doc? One of our issues is always also staff time, so making something that brings that issue together would be helpful. Okay? So thank you all for your time.
Ian
Yes?
Webster, can I just say, Brian, what you were saying about a letter passing this resolution, thank you all very much, doesn't predispose that you can't send a letter. So if the board sends a letter on any of the issues that we're facing, and I agree with you, there's so many, but passing this resolution certainly does not mean that the board cannot send a letter from the board.
No, that's true, and I suppose if we drafted a quick letter that I could sign for the board, we could attach the resolution to it, saying that, it could be a very brief letter saying that we're very concerned and how that will impact our community. Yes, Ellen?
We can help provide hyperlinks for the numbers.
That'd be great. Yeah, it would just cut our staff time down. Thank you. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So,
I think everybody should stick around for the rest of the meeting.
For the wastewater discussion? Last time it was paving, they didn't stay for.
Right.
Friends of Sludge, where are you now?
Oh, keeping that door open wouldn't hurt my feelings at all.
I turned the HVAC back on. I don't know what's
hey
going on.
Ross,
I understand.
how are the bees doing?
Well, they had a hard winter, but they're bouncing back a bit now.
Okay, I saw you down checking the hives while I was moving a bunch of soil that got new raised bed gardens.
So that was you going by with the tractor?
That was me. Yeah, helping my kids. My kids moved back, my son got engaged, and my future daughter-in-law started a bakery, Chez La Vie. Oh my God.
A bakery?
She's baking for Full Belly Farm. Oh my God, the food. I was the test case. Dan said I got to lay off it. So. Okay, Emily.
So it looks like water and wastewater proposed budgets are first on the agenda for my efforts here. I would propose we start with wastewater since Jeremy is in the house with us.
We're skipping over infrastructure committee updates and recommendations.
Am I? Not intentionally.
Number 7.
No, it's 7 Amy.
No, we go right to 7A.
If I'm out of order, I'll.
Oh, no,
Whatever.
it's fine, whatever the.
Okay, I feel like we usually close with that, but, wastewater, so we went through 2 meetings with the infrastructure committee to review both water and wastewater. I think we spent a lot more time on the wastewater budget than we did on the water budget. We
ended up receiving a recommendation for both of them. And then after the fact, Jeremy and I went back through wastewater and looked at the industrial surcharge revenue and made some changes to it that significantly decreased the user rates and the quarterly fees that we had originally proposed. So I just want to make sure everybody is aware that what is presented in this version 4 is slightly different in that specific line of line 10, sewer surcharges, than what we were looking at with the infrastructure committee. And the main thing that we did there is,
Excuse me one second, Emily. You've got version 4?
yes,
It's not in our packet.
B3 is what we had in the packet.
version 4 should be in the packet.
Wastewater. We have V3, there's no line 10 in that.
Yeah, wastewater, version 4. Water is version 3. Wastewater is V4.
Okay.
Is that what you have?
The revision.
It just says rev.
It just doesn't have a
The
V.
revision,
Oh, yeah.
revised,
Yeah, okay.
okay, so.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Agreed.
So line 10, I highlighted the industrial sewer surcharge in red to show that I had modified it since we had discussed it at infrastructure committee. And so historically, that line item has not increased based on an actual rate increase. It's been sort of, like last year it was level funded, and I haven't played a hand in it going back. Last year, the former superintendent set the rate and he level funded it, even though we were increasing rates and quarterly payments, and all of those go into that line item. And so if you don't calculate that number in, you're driving up the user rate,
Right.
which is reflected in line 3,
Right.
without showing that the revenue increase there that you would be capturing. And so we tried to go back after the fact, after meeting with infrastructure, to play around with the numbers. And Fred had actually asked me to do, show like usage over time, which actually ended up being really helpful because it gave me the confidence that we have had historical usage that hasn't fluctuated drastically. So I am pretty confident in being able to change that number based on the user rate and the quarterly payment. There's also the sewer surcharge built into that. So it's those 3 components in that line item. And so this increase is also lowered the sewer charge that our users actually see.
So does this indicate that people bringing septage will have a rate increase of like 25%? Is that what that means?
So the septage is in line 11, that's septage
Okay.
pumping.
So what is the sewer surcharge? I'm sorry.
Sewer surcharge is the industrial users.
Industrial users.
It's just like the
Gotcha.
higher loading users that tax the system higher than a residential user.
That's like the cabinet agreements in there.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think I think the reason why it's all built out separately is because Cabot used to pay a different user rate, and so it made sense to put that in its own line item.
Yeah.
I propose this year to leave it as is, but I think moving forward, those user rates and quarterly fees should just be lumped in with line 3. It doesn't need to be called out separately. It's next to impossible for me to track because Jeremy has to calculate it on a monthly basis, and it's also a bit of a nightmare for Jeremy because he is responsible for sending out bills that are $100,000 to these users, where if there's a math error on his end, that's an issue.
So these are the industrial discharge permittees.
Correct. So the way that they work is there's a couple factors to them. There's a flow factor where they pay the same flow rate as every other user in town. And then we look at the biological oxygen demand and the total suspended solids versus what we're seeing at the plant. And if they're running above, there is a surcharge for that.
How many industrial discharge permits do we have in town?
Right now, I would need my spreadsheet. I want to say we have 7.
7.
Yep. Most of those are small. The 2 largest ones currently are the Agrimark plant, which is the largest, and then the new Purpose Energy plant. is actually, they're moving a significant amount of wastewater every month. Their last month's was 2 million gallons.
Wow.
Because they took on Vermont hard cider and then all the trucked in that they're using to produce energy.
Wow.
It's enlightening when you see how much of the revenue budget is
Significant.
Yeah.
Just from the industrial discharge.
Yeah, it's so flow wise, industrial flow is about 45% of all the flow we take at our plant. Biologically, it's well over 50%. Wow. That's of what we see going through the plant from the industrial users. Yep. So it's a significant portion of the contribution to the plant and the revenue.
Much has it been reduced by the project that was done down there
By the
by
digester?
Purpose Energy.
The Purpose
Energy, yeah.
Purpose Energy has not reduced as much because
Thought it was supposed to.
well, most of what's going to Purpose Energy is stuff that used to get trucked off site.
Oh, really?
Yeah, is stuff that
It's land application.
that Agrimark would dispose of. They were going to local slurry pits and farms. It's their very, very high strength waste. What has started to reduce, Cabot did that project with their new dissolved air flotation treatment system, and we have seen reduction in the biological loading. Not a lot, but we are starting to see some reduction in the biological loading based on their treatment system.
But only about 20% of this value reflects the biological
Yes.
loading. The rest of this number is the user rate and the quarterly fee.
Yeah, yep. Bulk of its flow.
And that doesn't change by going to Purpose Energy. The flow still goes to the plant.
Yeah.
I know more about waste than I ever.
I know than you ever wanted to.
Thanks to Jeremy.
Can I ask another question about the budget and the capital improvements? Besides the new wastewater plant project and the things that are listed in debt retirement, one of the largest line items is number 133, or 136. You know, there's an enormous amount of money that's other capital improvements. I'm sorry, I'm back, they're the.
135?
WWTF is a big part of that, but the 133 was the one I went, that's $649,000.
Are you asking what projects we're looking at?
Yeah, it's a big number for not a lot of detail.
So that is South Street, Phase 5. We have Bakery Lane in engineering, Rogers Road Pump Station, which we had the bond vote on in March to advance that one. And then Pump Station number 9 out on Waybridge. We need to get that into engineering. Those are the projects that we're actively working on out of that fund. That's all of our capital projects.
When we get to water, I have a similar question,
Okay.
and that's a comparable line item. But thank you.
Yep.
I just want to comment that I wasn't able to attend the infrastructure committee meeting. I was out of range of any cell signal at all the time. But I did, I really appreciate Beth Dow's minutes. And the staff helped me view the video, which was much more extensive than the discussion. Dan Brown had some very good questions, and pointing out the effect on families and cost per family. For example, that the minutes can only do so much to, at some point Beth started saying, well, there was an extensive discussion. You know? But viewing that video is, I'm impressed with the depth of discussion that went into it and all the work, and particularly the after effort on the septage. So just wanted to compliment you all on that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Questions? There's no questions. Did we want to look at water then?
Yeah.
Do you have questions on water, Fred?
Okay,
Hang on, let me flip pages, Fred.
the water here. Water budget, 7A. So the capital improvements, it has a bunch of debt service, and then transfer to capital improvements, line 177 is, so FY '25 budget was 575, but spent to date is 864,000. it seems like a lot over budget, and I'm trying to understand what happened in water that,
So
this FY '25 didn't include all the water breaks, did it? That was FY '24.
that doesn't come out of the capital line items. That comes, you see that reflected in maintenance and mains, but that was FY '24, I think, was that bigger spike, larger spike. The capital improvements last year was South Street.
Oh.
And
South
so
Street,
there's
of course.
ARPA funding that hasn't been, Nick hasn't made the transfer back yet. So I believe end of this fiscal year, the ARPA.
So going forward, the 695, is that more, we've done enough water on South Street, or are we doing more?
We have, I mean, I've personally done enough water on
Yeah,
South Street. So for water, we have, sort of building off of the asset management plan that we developed last year. So right now in engineering, we have the redundancy project for, a line to help support Industrial Ave.
All right, the one
So
behind Cabot.
that one's in engineering. We have an additional well source in engineering. I want to get Route 7 Katy Road in engineering. That was another high priority in the asset management plan. We have the Bakery Lane water line project that has a portion tied to water. The other major contributor is a meter replacement project that we have $200,000 allocated towards this year, or for FY '26, FY '27, and I think it goes into FY '28 also.
How many meters do we have left to replace?
Almost all of them, honestly. We haven't been replacing meters, we've been replacing the endpoints. So a lot of our meters are quite old and they start spinning more slowly and recording less accurately. And so our theory is that a lot of our water loss is actually in the meter reading. It's not actually physically being lost.
So one of the major recommendations in the 2018 water study and then the more recent asset study was pressure relief valves.
Yep.
And have we done any of those, or?
So that's being built into the water redundancy engineering for Industrial Park, which is really where we see the major
Behind
pressure
Cabot.
surges. Yep, out there. And we have been installing some hydrants that can read pressure. And so we're putting them, we put one in on South Street, there's one out at 116, there's one up by Cabot, and so we're sort of staggering them around town so that you can see major spikes. And from the one up at Cabot, we have gotten a lot of data of when those users are coming on and off line, and it's definitely creating a surge in the system up there.
So the water rate exhibit that's in our packet, here's where, you know, the principle in the lower right corner says that the flat rate includes fixed expenses, debt service, reserve funds, and capital, and the unit rate is for variables for large usage, I guess. So we have, you know, we're doing a major, that line behind Cabot, and the pressure relief valves are hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe more, right? So why should that all be on the fixed rate and not on the businesses and entities that are approximately benefited and serving them?
I think we should do it both ways, realistically.
How do you do it both?
Well, I think when we have large users coming on, I think we need to make sure that there's infrastructure in place, and it might be an additional tap-on fee or something like that that they have to contribute towards. I think there's a few different ways to go about it. But essentially, what we discovered in the asset management plan is that our flat rate, the fixed rate, covers about 35% of our water utility, and the unit rate covers 65, and really you want those numbers to be
Well, that's because
flipped.
you have some huge water users, right? That or so much more comes in from usage.
But Dan, the way I usually, Fred, the way I usually think about it is that, right, like the cost is not delivering the next gallon.
Right.
It's building out the infrastructure.
Yeah.
And so the readiness to serve, having those lines available to your house is most of the cost of running a water and wastewater system. It's not treating the next 1,000 gallons or delivering it to your house.
So, just wanting to, at the bottom here, we're talking about the flat rate increase of 35% as opposed to the usage rate increase of 2%. And I don't know, I'm trying to explain this to homeowners, who have a relatively low usage, and yet the primary rate base on the flat rate is all the residences. And, I'd just say that businesses, industrial users can deduct these expenses where homeowners can't. Yeah, I think affordability and ability to pay is a factor, and the difference between the rate increases might appear to the average homeowner's residence to be disproportionate. Do you think?
I think that with enterprise funds, the goal is to align the costs as nearly as you can with the revenue.
I included a comparison of maybe 7, 8 different municipalities in the first May meeting that we had, showing where, and so I haven't updated it with the new proposed sewer rate, which would change us slightly. We would actually be lower compared to what I had us at. But on the water side of it, we, and it's a little bit hard to compare also because you don't know how municipalities are funding their infrastructure. Some invest heavily in their infrastructure and some don't, and some are also doing distribution and treatment like we are, whereas others are just buying from a supplier like Champlain Water District. And so Rutland, using the same gallon usage, Rutland was the lowest, and then we fell 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th on there. Montpelier is almost 3 times as high as us. Shelburne is significantly higher. So I think when you look comparatively throughout the state, I don't think we're out of line with what other communities are experiencing. And you also have communities making major infrastructure investment. And so I think some of this is a reflection of potential bond votes coming, into fruition that for infrastructure that they're starting to work on.
I'm surprised our number of accounts hasn't gone up over the last 4 years.
It hasn't drastically changed.
Hasn't changed, not one. It's the same for
Oh, look at that, yeah.
in town and out of town. We had no tap-ons in 4 years?
We've had tap-ons. Some of it is a little bit hard. Yeah, we've had tap-ons.
Okay.
And I think like this year we'll have stone crop. Although like in this first round we won't have many. It'll be more next cycle that we'll see a larger user increase there.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions? None of us like it.
Right.
The fact is that to get to where we want, we've already recognized for the last, Heather's been beating the drum for at least 6 years, that we were falling further and further behind on maintaining our infrastructure. And if we let that continue, I do feel like we've made some huge strides in the last 3-4 years. But there's still a lot of needs.
I think I pulled some bond. Did you put the bond ratings in there? So I pulled a couple of different bond options just to show if we got the funding we're sort of hoping to get, we'd be looking at a $36 million bond versus if we had to bond for the full amount, and comparing a 20-year to a 30-year. But I think moving forward, what we really need to look at is, we're essentially making an upgrade to this plant, but there's going to be infrastructure in that plant that in 25 years we are having an even bigger conversation because the tanks will likely have to be replaced. It's not just the infrastructure in the tanks.
Right.
And so we can't stop funding it at this level.
But, I mean, does it make sense to do a 30-year bond for equipment that needs to be?
This isn't equipment, the tanks are.
Right, I get it.
Mark, what's the difference between the 20-year and the 30-year?
I think it was like 2.5 million to 4.6 million was sort of the range of what we'd be looking at. It depends on the funding we are able to capture. Yeah, I mean, there's still so many variables.
When do we have to make a decision on this?
On which
the-
piece?
On
of
how
this?
much to bond and the length of the term?
Not in the immediate. That'll be further out. We'll start being able to secure funding in the coming cycles, and then
Yeah.
I think we'll have a better idea. of-
Okay.
One of the things watching the video of the meeting, and Dan, or I'm not sure which member brought it out from memory, but the point is made that we're trying to ramp up the revenues that we can get based on what we think we can reasonably collect. And what's different here, we wouldn't just set a tax rate on what we think we could get to ramp up, because we know someday we're gonna have to spend more property tax money on things. Usually we have a budget. We make a budget and the rate match. And there's specific projects and operating budgets that connect that for property taxes. Not so much with the water and sewer. I'm listening to Heather and others. I wish we could have some kind of graph that shows the increase over past, because some members noted that it's had to be brought up fairly dramatically. But what does the ramp look like going forward?
How
with
far
what we're
back
talking
do you
about?
want it, Fred? I can do that.
Well,
Is it the back, or you're worried
Well, I
about when
think
the bond comes
looking at it
up?
in perspective, I think the average homeowner, it might have been Jeff Bradsford who noted his bill has increased significantly. Maybe Dan remembers from attending the meeting. But anyway, imagine you're a homeowner, and not all of you enjoy paying water and sewer bills. But if you go back 5 years or something like that, and then what is the ramp forward that is, and I realize it's hard to do because you don't know what grants you're going to get, you don't know the final cost of things, but we do have the water
I can show
asset
it
study.
with
that-
the different projections. I think the scarier part to me is that in 2018 we reduced the rates.
Then show that. I mean,
That's what I mean. I would want to go back far enough to show like how gradually we were, and then we took a dive, and so we are just barely back. This proposed rate is just barely back up to what. I'm pretty sure I'd have to pull that again.
I just think
but
if all we're showing is a
it was-
35% rate increase in
It was
water,
a shocking
for average
drop.
people, they're, having some more perspective for that would help us defend it.
I think a real shocking number, if you take that, the bond payments that will be due when we do this and divide it by the number of users, if we don't have a whole lot of cash already set aside, it's going to be astronomical. What would you say, 2.5 million to 3.6 million? I don't have it in front of me. Divide that by the number of users per year, and that's an unbelievable number.
Yeah.
That's very expensive. But I'm talking particularly for the sewer, but even for the water, it's going to be pretty scary.
We care to make a motion?
Is there a lot of difference between the wastewater and water in terms of knowing our rate base, and we don't have water permits like we do for industrial discharge? The college has a lot of water accounts, as I understand it. Every building has a meter, and
We have allocations for water.
so you don't bill the college as a single single water meter bill. They have a flat rate for Pinker Hall and a flat rate for a particular house or?
Each,
and then
depending,
use
I
rates?
mean, they have 160 different meters, I
so-
think.
So, but if you added them all up, they're a big user in the town.
They're one of our largest users.
So, but they're not a heavy loading user like industry. So do we know as much about our rate base on large users on the water side to know the spread of this flat rate versus usage?
Not sure I understand your question.
Well, I'm not saying it very clearly. You know how we were able in the sewer to show the large, heavy loading users. We don't know as much about the
I wonder
water side.
I wonder, Fred, if that's because there's a factor in the sewer that doesn't exist with the water, right? So water is just flow, right? Gallons is gallons. Versus on the wastewater side, we have gallons and strength, right? You get water is just equal on an industrial user. They take water in, then give us back a wastewater of varying strength. So there is simply a factor on the wastewater side that we take into account in the industrial billing that isn't in the water side.
I guess what I'm asking is, are there more large water users other than the major industries we talked about and the college?
The hospital, the college.
Oh, the hospital.
Yep.
Hospital's a big one.
And I think there is a good, the hospital and the college, they have lots of tap-ons, there's a lot of lines to maintain and everything, and having a per tap charge being greater, otherwise, they're not incurring their fair share of the maintenance of the system. So I do agree with the way you're looking at it now. That logically, that flows for me.
It works a lot easier with the water side. With the wastewater side, it's harder to separate it because of the loading piece of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would love to move to accept and approve the proposed recommended fiscal year 26 town water and wastewater budgets and related rates.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other comments or questions on it? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye. I think that was unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thanks,
for your
Jeremy.
work.
Thank you, Emily.
Moving on, Middlebury River construction engineering agreement. We have gotten the contract to Markowski. We're moving it forward. Still working with Army Corps to get their piece of the permit finalized. I got the work in the stream alteration permit yesterday, Monday, Tuesday? I don't know. Yesterday. So we're moving forward. The work in the river is July 1st to October 1st. So I requested SLR, who designed the project for us, to act as the construction engineer for the project. They provided this with limited number of hours for on-site. They'll be there for the more important phases, and I can always go out and assist during the gaps to fill in when needed. But I think it's should be a pretty relatively simple project out there.
Roy was my kid's hockey coach for a couple of years.
Oh, I would not have pegged Roy as a hockey player.
He is a
Interesting.
very good hockey player.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's important for river work.
Absolutely.
Common ground you find is good.
So I'd move to approve the proposed engineering agreement with SLR Industrial International Corporation for $30,550 for the Middlebury River Stabilization and Floodwall Repair Project.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions on it? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Awesome.
Okay, on a similar note, I requested Otter Creek Engineering provide us with a construction inspection proposal for both Mary Hogan's stormwater construction, which is slated to begin this summer, and also the water storage tank. With the thought that tank is designed by Dufresne Group, but they do not have capacity to provide on-site inspection. And Otter Creek designed the schools portion of the stormwater project. We had Aldrich and Elliott do the town's portion, but they'll be on site anyway, so it makes sense for them to just be overseeing both pieces of it. Since they gave me this contract, we've had to pull a piece of the stormwater project at Mary Hogan and postpone it until the summer of 2026. But Otter Creek said that they would hold their pricing, and the contractor is going to hold their pricing to get it done. They couldn't get the components in the time frame because it's in the parking lot, so they have to be done by the time school's back in session. So
I think that might be a recession indicator.
was that?
I think it might be a recession indicator when people are willing to hold their pricing.
Is there a new water tank being installed?
Yes, the water tank up on Chipman Hill.
Oh, the same, okay.
Or the Mary Hogan piece of it. The
Mary Hogan piece.
Mary Hogan's stormwater. Don't drink it. It's part of our 3-acre permit that we have to. So the school has about 4 acres of impervious, and we have 4 acres of impervious. And so we independently designed our treatment for our
You should talk to
portion.
the Superintendent Baker about that.
Yeah.
Had her here.
About drinking? Well,
Oh, owning the rec park.
About getting back the land,
Oh.
yeah.
Never mind.
it's in the works. It's in the conversation. So yeah, it's stormwater. So we're doing a big underneath the town-owned parking lot, a big sand basin, and then 2 bioretention cells out by the skate park and out by the skating rink. Those will go in this year, but the sand basin will be next year.
We won't do the work till we get the agreement on the rec park, Fred.
It's a good idea.
I think with the
Business
funding we have, we should probably jump on our side of the work as soon as possible.
So the money for this, you got a water project and a stormwater
The
project.
water project is built into water capital for the water tank project bond vote that we approved 2 years ago. I think this is slightly under what we estimated construction engineering to be.
Part of this is gonna be allocated to water capital and part of it to
Correct.
town general or whatever.
Part of it will come out of
Public grant.
stormwater improvements, and part of it, that capital fund, and then the Mary Hogan piece will come out of stormwater improvements, and then the water tank comes out of that.
Got your book square there, Fred?
What?
You got your book square?
My books. Nick said she's operating 85 capital projects. Other than the last.
She's busy.
Keeping track of.
I've brought in 85 capital projects?
Nick came in and gave a report on all the capital improvement account numbers. He's still tracking, some of which are
Oh.
in hibernation.
True.
But it was a good deal more than we see in the capital budget. Anyway.
They're in there, they're tucked in.
So what do you need a motion? Guys? Make a motion?
Yes,
Yes, please.
I'll move to approve the proposed engineering agreement with Otter Creek Engineering for $119,500 for the Mary Hogan stormwater treatment practice and water tank project.
Second.
Seconded, any questions on that? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Unanimous. Public Works vehicle purchase.
Okay, so we have $40,000 in the upcoming equipment fund towards a new vehicle for the Director of Operations. And the intent of his current vehicle was to go to the mechanic, and we were gonna put in a lift gate for it to turn it into the mechanic's truck. We have since hired a new employee to work on buildings and grounds. What's his title? Or what is that position's title? Anyway.
Buildings and
Bill,
grounds.
is it, okay.
Yes.
So that individual also need a vehicle, which has sort of accelerated the need for this purchase a little bit ahead of schedule. So Dave put out a bid for an electric truck, sort of in the effort to electrify the fleet where it's possible. He put it out for an F-150 Lightning and received quotes from two local, well, sort of local, from Middlebury, South Burlington, and then a vendor in Georgia, which their price was really high. But none of them, they were all fleet vehicles that had about a 6-month lead time. And so he then contacted the low bid of those to see if they had any vehicles actually on the lot that were available. And so they did find F-150 that met more or less the specs he was looking for, and quoted $64,206. And so we've been looking at what we were putting into the equipment fund and what we were proposing to purchase, and have been able to put a few items aside, like the cold planer attachment that we had at $22,000. That was going to be a purchase this year. And so by moving some of those things, pushing the purchase date out a little bit, we've been able to find the additional funds needed for this purchase. But it's still just a few short weeks in advance of the FY26 budget coming into effect. But he's a little bit nervous because it is currently for sale on the lot. Right. So if we don't get it, we're potentially looking at a 6-month lead time.
Yikes. Do we have charging infrastructure?
We have a level 2 at DPW. Okay. We have a level 2 up at Wastewater, and we have a level 2 at the rec center.
Yeah. I assume this vehicle will be in use a lot of the workday.
Yeah.
I just worry about keeping it available.
I think these, I don't know for this one, but I know my friends that have Lightnings, it's a 300+ mile range.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So on the weekend, leave it at work and you're good.
And that he uses the vehicle to commute, so he can always plug in at home too.
There's that. Okay.
But I think there's enough downtime during the day that he could always plug in and charge up. And we also, down at GMP, they're putting in level 3 chargers. So should he really need a quick shot, he could always go down there.
Cool.
Any thoughts?
I move to approve the proposed purchase of the F-150 Lightning truck from G-Stone Motors for $64,206.
Second.
Questions? So this is a question for you, Mark. If this is on our 26 budget, do we have the funds right now to make that commitment? Or?
We do. I just ran all the numbers today.
Okay.
So, in the equipment fund we have.
In the equipment fund, yeah. There's a reserve in there.
Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 But I want to drive it at least once.
It's 0 to 60 is under 4 seconds.
Oh my God.
That's true of even my buggy. You want to drive mine, Dan?
It is pretty fun. I want to drive the truck. It's a rocket ship.
Any other updates?
We have started work on Middle Road North. I haven't gotten complaints for traffic, at least from the public. I've gotten complaints from the contractor who has cars flying through the traffic package.
I heard you've got very entertaining flaggers down there.
We do have a flagger that's very into twirling.
Very good.
Yeah, and we have one that sits there and listens to music, which I think I would too if I were a flagger. And then at the far end, he's like twirling all day.
Very good.
But it seems to be going well. They're working on bumping out the road on the west side. They've done the work for the box cut for the sidewalk and the improvements on the east side.
Great.
They're going to have the lining for the culvert is later this week, and then once school's out, they'll start with the major reclaim and the major overhaul of that. And then we do have Halliday Road rehabilitation out to bid right now. So that will primarily be a reclaim project that goes from Route 7 to just beyond the pump station, and also raising the grade of the road slightly through the little gully that the pump station's in. But it will help with a lot of our drainage issues there, and will give that pavement a good long life. And then the southern portion of the road will be a shim and overlay, where it's not as, that hasn't rutted out as much on that end for some reason. So I think we can get away with just a shim and overlay down there. And we do have a $200,000 grant from V-Trans for that project.
So in the infrastructure committee agenda notes that are in our packet, there was the mower purchase and the excavator purchase.
We took the mower off of this agenda because it is lower than the purchasing policy.
Okay.
And the excavator is in this coming packet on
Okay.
Thursdays. You're ahead of yourself.
Okay.
I think that's it for me. Unless there's questions.
I'd expressed to Mark, I was a little concerned. I read the minutes of the discussion, and we substituted an electric mower, and the bid was.
So we
not
didn't.
Okay, because
We-
I
so-
was a little concerned about that, of setting an example of bidding one thing and then buying something different.
Oh,
So-
so we ended up going gas. So I had reached out to the Energy Committee. We unfortunately, Dave wanted to get it out to bid, or wanted it in the packet. It was like 24 hours notice, I think, for when he got the bids in.
Yeah.
And at the last minute, I said, you should probably ask for a electric option also, just so that we can support all parties. And so he did, but the numbers were significantly higher. And so I reached out to the Energy Committee, but it didn't really give them enough time to meet as a committee, because their meeting is later in June. But I worked with Mike Roy and Dan Rafferty, and I met with them yesterday also, but I think their interest is more in supporting HVAC and building upgrades at this point. And so that we sort of did a back and forth.
It's a better payback, frankly. And I was a little disappointed because we already bought one.
We bought
electric
one.
zero turn, and it didn't work.
It didn't work, but I think, so now we have 2 gas powered, and I think it would work in this application, because the thought is that we want each crew to have their own. But we also have a crew like Wastewater who doesn't necessarily have to mow like on a soccer or ball game schedule. You know, like they have a very different need than what the other users do. And so I was thinking that they could more selectively use the electric, and I worked with Luther Tenney, because he uses both at the college. But the problem that they run into when you have a spring like we've had with a lot of rain and the grass gets really long, then you have to go gas because it just bogs down. You can't keep up with the electric. So I was thinking that we could use the gas in those situations, and we would have to share, and then use the electric when we're able to in the more
I feel like
ideal.
I feel like in doing that, we're doing it just to check the box for a constituency that doesn't make sense when you talk about utility of a piece of equipment that we're investing in. You have a spring like this, you need them to be gas.
Yeah.
You have one broken down,
Yeah.
you need to be able to use them. I think we need to, and I don't want to get involved in a long discussion on purchasing, but I don't know who's making the decisions on that stuff. That didn't make any sense to me.
So I think we have an understanding with the Energy Committee for a direction. One thing that they're looking at.
Wait a second. Energy Committee does not drive our equipment purchase.
No, they don't. But they are an advisory committee, and we do keep their considerations in mind.
Yeah, but it seems like we're bowing to their.
So I don't think we are, Brian.
Okay.
I don't think we are. And what they are going to work on this summer is looking at our buildings and considering HVAC upgrades that we are projecting out into the future, and where we can better allocate those energy efficiency funds.
I think that's great.
I think it's a better use, and it'll be a
payback
better return.
Because it doesn't have the limitations.
Right. I agree.
It's an all upside, so.
I think we're also working with an intern through a grant that is going to look at our fleet and make recommendations of where it makes sense to consider electrification and where it doesn't. And I think what we're going to find is in most of our commercial uses, it doesn't make sense because it's not there yet.
The duty cycle's too high.
So he's working on that this summer. I think they'll be coming, they'll be presenting to the infrastructure in August.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Mark, town manager specific project updates.
Yeah, I just wanted to share a few verbal updates with the full board tonight. Starting off with our delinquent tax list. Back in late March, I think I shared with you an update at that time, and a draft letter was included in your packet, for delinquent property owners. At that time, we had about 30 parcels and roughly $200,000 in unpaid taxes. Since that time, we had council review the letter, made a few minor edits to it, and we mailed those out on May 13th, so just about a month ago. The mailing brought in about $30,000 in tax payments, so we've made some progress there, and at least one taxpayer has entered into a payment plan with our finance office. So our efforts are paying off, and the next step will be to bring a list of accounts back to this board, but I want to give the letter a little more time. So good news to share there. Next update on the list is the Downtown Improvement District Commission. As you know, a renewal effort has been underway for a few months now by our DIDC to renew the ordinance in the special assessment tax district. I'm happy to report that the DIDC collected 68 signatures.
Wow.
So we've made it across the finish line, and
Great.
I wanted to just say nice work to everyone on the DIDC team. They spent a lot of time out there talking with property owners over the last several weeks. So the next step in the process is to update and renew the ordinance, so you can expect to see that hit your next agenda. And then the DIDC will work over the summer on a list of future projects to recommend to this board during budget season.
Awesome.
More good news.
Yeah.
Our annual operations calendar, again, something I mentioned in a previous verbal update to the board. The first draft has been published. There was a copy in your packet for.
I love it.
this
First
evening.
annual operations.
This is
calendar.
amazing.
First one.
Holy cow.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is.
You know what? Your special projects are doing really well. Have you?
We're getting there. We're making progress.
Yeah.
So it's a working document. We'll keep adding. I know there's a couple departments on here still missing. We're working on it, and you'll notice the date on the front page will be changing pretty regularly. The goal, again, just to remind everyone, was to get this information out of our department heads and onto paper, and get some of these deadlines and recurring events into a document that we can pass down to our successors over time, so we don't lose that information during transitions going forward. So I just wanted to say thank you to the staff, and I also wanted to thank Beth Dow. She's put a considerable amount of time formatting this into this document. So going forward, as of July 1st, you will all see a monthly update. You'll see you'll get an email with that month's activities and reminders.
That's cool.
You'll get it in the same email as department head, so you'll know what's happening here on in the town offices and our other.
Yeah.
I have one other update to add on before I conclude tonight, and that's our collective bargaining process. I know I've mentioned this to a few of you already. Our first collective bargaining session with our AFSCME union is tomorrow. I think it's at 1 o'clock.
Yep.
So we'll be exchanging proposals at that time, setting ground rules at that time, and reviewing those proposals. So we'll each get a first look at those proposals tomorrow, and then we'll set our negotiating schedule for at least 3 meetings out after that. So I'm only mentioning this because this will be a staff priority over the next several weeks for us to get this wrapped up, because as of July 1st, of course, the start of the new fiscal year, we're hoping to have, or at least be very close to having an agreement in place. I know we're going to cross that line, but we're hoping to keep that gap between agreements as small as possible.
Sure.
Nice. Encouraging, isn't it?
Real good. I love it.
All right.
That's all I have.
Board member concerns. Fred?
I'm good.
Isabel?
Next meeting, I'll be virtual. I'm gonna be a camp counselor at Girls State, which I was not a part of. I wish I knew about this, but rising seniors who identify as girls from all across Vermont are gonna be able to go to BTSU Randolph, and they learn about local, state, and federal politics and take on different roles. So I don't know if Middlebury has any girls going, but I know Virgins has 4. Usually Middlebury sends, but I didn't see any.
I thought they always sent.
Yeah.
Where
I'm
is
sure.
Boys State still at Norwich?
Yeah, I think they're at Norwich. Yeah.
Long history there. Farhad?
Thank you.
I'm good today.
Dan?
I'm good.
The Charter Review Committee met for the first time a couple hours ago in this very room. I think we're off to a good start. We've got some easy things and some harder things. We agreed that before we dive deep into things and invite outside people for expertise, we would talk to the select board about what we were looking at.
Good idea.
Seemed right.
Yeah. A question for the board. Do you want to then put on our next agenda the request for your discussion?
No.
No.
It feels different than the one that we
I agree.
just did. So I would be a no for that.
For now, no.
Same.
Well, we have a majority. Fred, did you want to vote on it?
I don't know enough about it yet, but well, like Andy, I'll abstain at this point.
Okay, we need an executive session. Somebody care to lead us in? What are you, shutting off?
Yeah, I'm out of here. It's 9 o'clock. This was supposed to be over at 8.
I move to enter into executive session with the inclusion of town manager, assistant town manager, and the director of administration related to the appointment of or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee as allowed under Title I, Section 313A3.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Okay.